Welcome to Tell Me More, the Allsteel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
All right, welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. I am lucky to be sitting here with one of my all-time favorite Allsteel human beings, Lauren Gant, Dr. Lauren Gant. And we're here to talk a little bit about ergonomics today. So I'm going to go ahead and start by throwing it over to her to give you an introduction of who she is and why I like her so much. Lauren?
Thanks, Jordan. The feeling is absolutely mutual. My name is Lauren Gant. I am a senior workplace advisory manager with Jordan.
That's right. I'm also Jordan Arnold. I'm a senior workplace advisory manager, and Lauren and I are parallels and counterparts, which I feel very fortunate about. But what we're talking about today is an area of expertise that Lauren holds a bit more deeply than I do. So I'm excited to get to dig into her layers of expertise on this. And I want to start us out like simple. Let's lay the groundwork. So can you start by giving us a definition of what we mean when we talk about ergonomics?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking about ergonomics today. This was really, my first foray into the world of furniture. So a topic that I'm very passionate about. When I think of ergonomics, my favorite way of talking about it is the study of the interaction between the human and their work environment.
Okay.
And then ultimately we want to use that data, we want to use that information to create healthy, productive, comfortable spaces. So we're thinking about, I think a lot of people get this picture in their head that it's like a very precise angle that we need to be sitting at, that there's like angles for your monitor, and posture is very important. And we're going to be talking about posture, but I also think about the variety of ways that we're working and what individuals need in each of those environments. So it's not a one size fits all sort of science. It is, we're thinking about what you're doing during the day. So some of you might be listening to this podcast in the car. Some of you might be listening to it while you're answering emails. And those are two totally different environments that we're dealing with. We're thinking about, your psychological state. So like, how stressed are you at work? Sort of a big, hairy question.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer it, Jordan. That's fine. But, or do you have a work friend? Like Jordan and I are work friends. And that helps a lot with our psychological state at times.
I love it.
And then we'll talk about individual differences. We come in different shapes and sizes, and we come with all these other differences too that we have to be thinking about. As we're thinking about what makes a healthy, comfortable workspace for individuals.
I love it. And I remember, a decade ago when you and I first met, and at the time I was in training and you were deep in ergo. And I was like, I just want to learn more about what this means and what you do. And one of my favorite things I learned from you, and that I share all the time when we talk about this with clients, is that, there's this assumption that ergonomics means this like singular posture, this like very perfect way of working. Right. And the reality is, like, even if you sit in the most perfect posture for 8 hours, you are not as healthy as if your body, like the movement in your body, like the ability to shift from position to position, keeps you in a healthier posture than just sitting perfectly for 8 hours.
Yeah. Yes. There is this corny phrase that ergonomists like to use. That's the best posture is your next posture. So let's do everything we can to create a good home base, and then let's promote movement and activity and, variety in what we're doing throughout the day.
Absolutely. So you seem to care a little bit about ergonomics, to like a slight amount of passion. So why does it matter so much to you? That sounded accusatory. Why do you care so much? Why do you think it's important?
I think, I have this deep passion for ergonomics for a couple of reasons. One is, I think I'm a self-declared ergo nerd. I can get
Mhm.
super scientific about it. You know, you introduced me as Dr.
I
Lauren
did.
Gant. My doctorate is in biomedical engineering. I went to school for very many years to study the intricacies and the complexities of this field.
Hmm.
I did a whole dissertation on a new way to study potentially harmful muscle activity.
Yeah.
So I can get really dorky about it. When I work on these, I work on a lot of ergo standards, and I, can get with my fellow ergonomists, and we can really get into the nitty gritty of the data.
Yeah.
And on the same day, I can spend 20 or 30 minutes with someone or a group
Hmm.
of someone's, and I can teach them some good rules of thumb, some good things to think about. And I feel like and the research shows that that can have these immediate impacts on their health and their well-being and just the way they think about work at the end of the day. So maybe that's really selfish that I have this like instant gratification that
I
I
don't think
can,
so.
that I can like use this information and really have these meaningful impacts on how people not only spend their day and how they feel
Hmm.
at work, but how they go home and spend time with their family after
Yeah.
work, or do the activities that they love to do after work.
It's highly personal, right? Like this experience that we have and this way that we interact. Like there's this very personal element to it. So it doesn't surprise me that that's something that matters to you.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to this broader topic that we've been talking about inclusive design.
Hmm.
Our conversation around ergo has been around for a long time, but I think it very much falls under this umbrella of inclusive design that you and I love to talk about so
We
much.
do. So tell me more about that. How do you see those connections, for lack of a better term, connecting?
Yeah. Um, I think, I think it's very visually obvious to us from a very young age that
Hmm.
humans come in all different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
And I think for many, I like to start the conversation around inclusive design around this idea of physical diversity because
Yeah.
it is a little bit more visually understandable. That
Yeah.
simple, baseline that we are physically shaped differently. So
Yeah.
when we think about neurodiversity or trauma-informed design, those things are just a little bit harder to see.
Yeah.
You can't see them; they're invisible.
Right.
So we do think about these visual differences, and there's like lots of other things that we need to be thinking about, like visual capabilities and strength
Hmm.
capabilities and your mobility throughout the day, throughout time. So
Yeah.
there are non-visual things too, but I think it really does allow us to think about how do we create spaces where people can come despite all of the things they're bringing with them, or because of all of the things they're bringing with them, and give them a space that feels like it was created with them in mind, a
Right.
space where they belong.
Well, and one of the things that we often talk about, like height adjustability, is often a conversation relative to ergonomics, right? Thinking
Mhm.
about the wellness of moving the body and sit to stand. But what I think is also so interesting about it is it's not just about sitting and standing, right? It's also about if I'm not 6'3", but if I was 6'3", and my counterpart was 5 foot, we would require maybe a slightly different height table, not full sit to stand, but that
Right.
like that minutia of adjustment to be able to create that space that works best for me and my body is so critical to feeling that level of health and support in my day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm also not 6'3", but I think this
You're
like
closer
brings
than I am,
this brings
to
up
be
like a
fair.
very personal feeling for me because, I kind of like I think of this story that I'm about to tell is like my first like experience in this thinking of ergonomics as inclusive design. And
Mhm.
I almost like to think of it as like my origin story as an
Yes.
ergonomist. But
Yes. Not
so
as a
for
villain, as a hero. Your
as a
hero
hero, as a
origin
hero,
story.
yes. Um, so if I haven't had the ability to meet you in person yet, I am a relatively tall individual. I'm I have always been a taller individual in my cohort of people that I'm with. Um, and that there's a lot of benefits to that with like reaching things off
Hmm.
shelves or playing basketball,
Basketball.
but there are drawbacks to that as well. And I think about this very specific thing, this my desk in first grade. I don't know if anybody else remembers their desk in first grade, or maybe this is my trauma that I'm
Right,
carrying with
right.
me. But I had one of those desks that was like a wooden seat
Oh, yep.
metal legs, and
Yep.
then there was a wooden box attached to it with a
Mm-hmm.
metal like bar, and
Mm-hmm.
that box was your desk, and you could open the
Yeah.
lid of the box, and maybe you can describe there was probably like that classic
Yeah.
S scratched into the top of your desk, right?
Right.
Like prime for graffiti, but
Yep.
that desk was very much not designed for someone like me, someone at
Yeah.
my stature, and I knew
Yeah.
it. I spent the majority of my lower elementary days with like one cheek on the seat and one
Yeah.
knee on the floor, or like totally sitting sideways. And the other thing you should know about me is I'm very much a rule follower. I like to
What?
I like to play within the bounds of where I'm supposed to be. And one of the rules is like keep your feet under your desk. And
Yeah.
so I became very clear that not only like was I weird that I didn't fit in this desk, but I was also like breaking cultural rules, breaking literal rules
Yeah.
by not sort of just dealing with my discomfort. And I know I'm being like I'm privileged in so many ways, and I know that like people experience much more impactful feelings of otherness, but this was really a feeling of otherness that stuck with me. And I
Yeah.
think about as I think about like how do we create environments where people can feel not only physically healthy but feel like they're fitting and that the space is meant for them.
Right. Well, and I think it's to validate, like it is no matter the scale of that otherness or we don't need to necessarily compare the
Yeah.
depth of those feelings, right? The reality is that you had that moment. It left a major imprint on who you are and how you feel and became your hero origin story into ergonomics because you cared, right?
Thank
Because
you.
it had such deep meaning. So you mentioned an idea just a few minutes ago relative to inclusive design, and this conversation about physical diversity tends to be easier for us to understand because it's more apparent to us,
Hmm.
right? We can engage with it more easily, we can see it, we can understand it more easily. It's easier to believe, right? Because we in
Right.
many cases can feel it, see it, understand it on our level as well. So when we think about that, not all of those consideration sets are fully visible to us. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think just expanding the way we're thinking about physical diversity is really an interesting thing. We often think of ADA and connect ADA with physical diversity and
Yep.
have this perception that if, we are meeting the outlined ADA requirements that we are accepting or welcoming physical diversity. And I
Right.
think, that's a good space to start, but I think we do need to start thinking well beyond that. So,
Yeah.
you know, color blindness is something that we talk about,
Hmm.
or this idea that can you visually differentiate between signage and the color of the wall behind it? These visual capabilities,
Yeah.
or we think about strength capabilities. Do
Hmm.
you have long meandering hallways without any seating? And should we start thinking about offering places for people to rest
Hmm.
as they navigate these spaces? And there's lots of other examples that we can give, but this idea that as we are evolving our technology, as we are evolving the ways we work and who's showing up to work, we should start thinking beyond these minimum standards and thinking more holistically about, you know, what what do we need to, oops, sorry, we should be thinking about what do we need to be inclusive for all ages, body sizes, genders,
Yeah.
all of the ways that we are physically different in the works environments, in the educational spaces.
Yeah. And we've talked about this idea before, like hand strength, I think is such an interesting element here
Hmm.
too, because we so often are creating privacy and focus space by placing doors in
Hmm.
environments, right? So this possibility that I might not be able to engage in a space because I'm not confident that I can easily get that door open without feeling uncomfortable or without feeling like I'm seen as something other, right? So judged potentially for my ability to open that door.
Right. That's really interesting. And would you even wager that, or would you even feel comfortable trying if
Right,
you're not
exactly.
confident that you're going to be able to do it? Or would that be a,
Exactly.
a barrier for you even to attempting? if it visually is suggesting to you that it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. I like to be really good at things, so I can tell you that I would not make the attempt. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's this level of like self like preservation in that
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yep. And so we can start thinking about what do we need to be doing from a floor plate, to think more broadly about including opportunities for all sorts of different people to show up and feel confident navigating the space. And we'll also think about what do we need to do from a product development standpoint to
Right?
offer that confidence that
Yes.
that this is for you.
Right. So I don't want to shock you with this next statement. But I'm going to go ahead and say it. I
Go
mean,
for it.
ergonomics has been around for a minute,
Yes.
right? This conversation has been around for a long time. Whether we've had the depth of understanding that we do today, that's maybe
Hmm.
debatable, right? But we've been talking about ergonomics as a topic for a long
For
time.
years. Right.
So why is it important that we continue to talk about it?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned before, the ways that we're working are changing, the places that we are working are changing and evolving, and we need to remember that ergonomics is still important in all those spaces.
Right.
I would say it was probably July of 2020. I got this influx of calls from friends and family that were like,
Uh-huh.
"What is it you do again? Tell me more about this ergonomics
How can I
because
leverage you?
because I've been sitting at my dining room table
Yeah.
and I feel awful. And I took for granted all of the things that I had at my desk that were given
Yeah.
to me. So I think that there is this realization that, those things are not fluff, that the things that are ergonomic, that offer these good postures actually do have this impact, that
Yeah.
we might not realize from one day at working at our kitchen table, but
Right.
over 3 months, that's gonna catch up to us. So I think there is this idea that we're just working in more spaces, and we're working from more spaces in the office and more spaces just globally as well. And how do we create spaces that not only support that work, but support the people in the postures that need to do that work?
Right. It's a great point. And like thinking about historically, when we would come into the office, that was a controlled environment that
Hmm.
likely someone like you was involved in setting up, right?
Right.
Hopefully, someone like you was involved to create a space that allowed for those interactions to happen in the healthiest way. But as we all went back to our homes, then the onus and responsibility is now on like me, the
Yeah.
homeowner, right? To
Right.
figure that out and create that space. And I'm not the expert in that. You are. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, and this idea, I think where we're kind of headed with this is a thing that you talk about a lot, and I appreciate, which is this idea of work geometry, right? Making sure that those postures are placed
Mhm.
appropriately for the activity at hand, that the different components interact with each other in the right way. So talk to me a little bit about the world of work geometry and how that applies to the ergonomics conversation.
Yeah, I mean, work geometry, in my view, is essentially ergonomics considered in all of the spaces that we're working. So we're
Hmm.
thinking about things like posture and what you're working with, what tools you're using, and how do we create these productive spaces. So, and doing that not just at the workstation, but in the collaborative spaces and in the mentorship spaces and in the socialization spaces. So, the sofa, for example, that I watch Netflix on at home allows me to get real relaxed and
Yeah,
real comfortable and lay out. And that's probably not the same support that I need in the work environment. So
right.
how do we think about what does a sofa that supports work activities look like? Is it too low? Is it too deep to support work? And also this really plays into that idea of going beyond ADA. Like,
Hmm.
are we creating spaces where everybody feels great getting in and out of all of the furniture, of all of the places that they're thinking,
Yeah.
or working? And I think I I've my understanding, the feeling I have when I talk to people about this topic is that this is no longer becoming this is no longer a nice to have when people are coming into work. It is
Hmm.
becoming table stakes. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm going to come into the office, if you're expecting me to be there, um, I'm expecting a great place that makes me feel good and that
Right.
supports the work I need to do when I
Right.
get there.
It's really putting the table in table stakes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, and like in its simplest form, we've seen this happen when, the wrong height table is selected with the wrong stool as an example, right? We see
Right.
this show up a lot where I am now trying to wiggle my way in to this environment and my legs are wedged between tabletop and
Yes.
stool, and that's not a terribly comfortable posture for me to work in long term.
Right. Or that space just isn't used. And
Right.
people say like, nobody likes that space. But
Right.
but figuring out the why behind that is really important too.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball and talk to me a little bit about where you see us headed, right? We've talked about a couple of things today already that
Hmm.
have been kind of like evolutions of ergonomics and maybe how we think about ergonomics. But where do you see us evolving towards?
Yeah, I'd really love to keep thinking about what do we need to be thinking about beyond ADA? Where do I currently have, for lack of a better word, I don't mean to be coy here, but where do I have blind spots related to physical diversity, and
Yeah,
what am I missing? What can we be thinking more about, and how do we start integrating some guidance for companies around these ideas? I think that the conversation around well-being and sustainability will continue to evolve.
yeah.
Are those two things always aligned? Are there times where there are tensions? I believe there are, but how do we sort of navigate that as the focus rightfully about sustainability increases? How do we sort of bring well-being alongside of that? And I would also say just, the way we continue to evolve, how is AI impacting how we're working?
Hmm.
How can we leverage the learnings from AI to create healthier workspaces? I think, we'll continue to investigate those ideas.
Amazing. Well, I understand, like, I'm a little offended, but I understand that I'm not the only one you're talking to on this particular mini series around ergonomics.
I
So,
I got to keep you to myself a little bit, Jordan.
okay,
I
okay.
can't share all of you. Yeah.
Well, acknowledging that I'm not the only one you're speaking to, tell me a little bit more about the mini series that you're doing with the Tell Me More podcast around Ergo.
Yeah, I'm really honored to be talking with Tony Ash in an episode.
Uh,
Tony is one of our product development managers, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that he and I talk about on a regular basis regarding ergonomics and product development. So today we talked a little bit more about the culture and the floor plate. That conversation will focus more on what are we doing as designers to really make sure that we are thinking about this at every step of product development. And then a sort of a new thing we're trying is I'm going to introduce you to a walkthrough of a ergonomic adjustment.
yeah,
I'm going to ask you to sit in your chair, sit at your table, and kind of come along with me as I walk through some good home-based ergonomic ideas.
love it. Awesome. Anything that you want to add into the conversation before we wrap things up today?
No, I just really appreciate you, Jordan, and I appreciate, you coming with me on this journey and really celebrating the ergonomic story that we've been telling for some time and that we'll, continue to tell in the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for listening to the Tell Me More podcast. Thank you, Lauren, for your thoughtful consideration within this space and your consistent willingness to evolve the conversation and explore what it could mean outside of what we already thought we knew. So thank you for your time, and I will talk to you soon, probably in
Thanks,
our next
Jordan.
meeting.
Sounds great. Can't wait. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of design and innovation. If you're hungry for more insights and stories, make sure to subscribe to Tell Me More on your preferred podcast platform. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at Allsteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue exploring the design to do more philosophy. Until then, thanks for listening.